that's what you're interested in doing. Yeah, I think we've got about 30 folks on now. So we're going to go ahead, I think. We'll wait a couple more minutes here. Try to get started. Welcome, everybody, to a very special year for INC. It's our 50th anniversary year, which is pretty amazing. I think this organization has been around for so long and had so many different faces as part of it for so long. My name is Keith Meyer. I'm the president of INC, and we are really lucky that Lamone Knowles, our vice president, and Judy Baxter are volunteered to put together a great meeting for today. Some folks from Radian, which has been doing some really great work on inclusion, equity, and diversity within neighborhood organizations around Denver, and also the Office of Social Equity is going to be here talking about how to really reach out to diverse communities within neighborhoods and really helping to give us some tools to do that better as neighborhood organizations. To get started here, and I'm still admitting people, Judy and Lamone. I don't know if you all are able to as well.
I can take over the admitting. Yeah.
Great. And also, if there's anybody just on the EC committee that can kind of help to monitor the chat, or if there's anyone else, if there's questions that pop up, I think I'm on a limited view computer here. I'm just have my laptop, and so it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So if there's questions that pop up to get addressed, please flag those and make sure we're seeing those. So I did want to start out really quickly with just a look back at what an incredible year INC had in 2024. I think we really just a big, huge thank you to the executive committee and the INC board for putting on what I think was, a remarkable amount of amazing programs. I don't know if you're able to, Judy, play that video if it plays. We put a little video together just of our year.
Well, hold on.
It's interesting, yeah. Otherwise, if we can't play it today, we'll send it. We've sent it out a couple of times now to the email list.
It.
And
I am trying to.
If it doesn't play, that's okay. We can send it out too, and we can drop the YouTube. It's on YouTube, so we can drop the link in the.
So I go to your YouTube browser's up to date. Oh, geez, sorry, Keith.
Yeah, that's okay. I think let's just move on.
Wait,
here we go. All right, perfect.
Is it? Is it going?
Yeah. I think some of the big highlights of the year were just that we were able to do a lot with some of the youth programming and donate to some of that across the city, and also putting on an RNO 101 lab as well was a big accomplishment, and a thank you to the board, and then our annual awards event. And we also, thanks a lot to Amber Kraska. We had an art fest that we did with that as well as our ballot initiative stuff in the fall too. So we really just accomplished a lot last year, and I think that's a testament to the board, the executive committee, and all of them. And then we'll send this link out too, and it's and if you want to share it with your RNOs or watch it on your own, that's fine too. Great, and that kind of brings us to this year, which we're very excited about, which is our 25th, or our 50th anniversary year. And we have a lot of stuff planned. I don't know if you can bring the slide deck back up, Judy. Uh, just to give a preview kind of the year we have ahead. And I really, again, thank the board for getting together in December and kind of figuring out kind of our upcoming programming for the year. Do you need, are you able to bring it up, Judy, or do you need me to? Okay. Well, I can just talk through a few things that we have on deck while we're waiting for that to come up. And we've, one thing that I've been trying hard to do over the last couple of years is to really come up with our full calendar for the year.
You're on, right?
Yeah. Tom, I'm just going to mute you. There we go. But one thing that I've been working hard to do is make sure that we get our full programming calendar kind of as much as possible put together by the start of the year so folks can get these things on their calendars. We can get this stuff out to city council offices. We're very excited about today's program and reaching, I think one of the things that INC wants to do better is to, help RNOs to figure out ways to reach more diverse communities. And that's something we hear pretty consistently across the board is that RNOs really want. And so we're really trying to figure out ways to help RNOs achieve the things that they want to as organizations. And we feel like this is a big one. So that's why we're starting the year off with this. We're very excited that next month we're going to be talking more about Denver's. I don't know if how many folks knew this, but in the recent budget that was passed, there's a new division, I think, of community empowerment that's going to be, I believe, part of the Human Rights Office. And so we're really excited to hear more about that next month in February and talking to, folks from the division or from the office, as well as, possibly some council members about what that office is going to look like and how they're really going to be able to support neighborhoods better. Very excited about our March event. We're going to have our elections in March, but also I think this is a topic that's come up frequently in different circles. Is just the amount of scams that are out there, and I think we're really looking forward to trying to figure out the best way to talk to the city attorney's office and other organizations about getting some information out there about scams. Right now, we're looking at a cannabis forum, and really there are some really actually interesting things that the city has set up with different marijuana business groups to help with neighborhoods. And I think a lot of that information really isn't out there. And so whether it's funding or helping with neighborhood events and things like that, this is really a resource that we feel like we want to get some information out there more. Judy's going to talk about this more coming up, but one of the things we're going to do this spring is really try to do some surveys and some questions from RNOs to kind of figure out what RNOs need more. And really hoping that we can address some of those issues, and we're hoping to kind of cover that too. I'm very excited about June. We have a date of June 12th that we are going to do a Denver Community Film Fest. We're going to show a screening of a movie called Join or Die that I talked about at the awards dinner in November. It's a very poignant film on civic organizations and the challenges that they've kind of faced over the last 20 years with declining membership and, kind of a change in how people, participate in civic groups. So I think this is going to be a really great event. Looking forward to getting more information about that out there. We're going to talk about BIDs this summer as well. We are going to do another training day in the fall, an RNO 101 lab again. Then we're going to, work. We've heard a lot of questions from folks about how to work better with the city. Very excited. We have an INC executive committee member that's going to help lead that. And then we have our 50th anniversary awards night in November. And I think we're, kind of gearing up all year for this. It's going to be a big event. We're looking forward to putting that on and getting That's going to be November 6th at this point, and we're looking forward to kind of gearing up for that this year. So we do have, and this is again in the agenda, there's a link to all these dates. And there's a Google Calendar link in there that you can add them to your personal calendars, and there's Zoom links included. And again, that's in the agenda that I dropped in the chat box earlier, but I will try to repost it, or if there's any INC board members or anything that can repost it, that's great. And we'll just try to just keep getting that information out there for folks. If you want to go to the next slide, Judy. Great, land equity acknowledgement. Lamone?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending our meeting this morning. My name is Lamone Knowles. I'm Vice President of Denver, Inc., and I'm also President of the East Denver Residents Council. We start our meetings with land and equity acknowledgements, and it goes as follows. Land acknowledgement. As residents of Colorado, we stand on the unceded ancestral lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Lakota, and Ute nations and peoples. These lands were also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other indigenous tribes. We recognize Native and indigenous peoples as the original stewards of this land and our presence among their descendants who still dwell within it. We pay our respects to indigenous and Native elders, past and present. Equity acknowledgement. We acknowledge that racial justice, equity, and climate justice are inextricably intertwined, and that poor, vulnerable, and the primarily Black, Indigenous, and people of color disproportionately bear the burden due to the lingering effects of systemic discriminatory practices. We commit to doing our part to ensure that when taking any action to create a sustainable and regenerative future, we will respect, promote, and consider our respective obligations concerning all aspects of equity and strive to create systems in which everyone can thrive. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Lamone. Here's just kind of an overview for today. We're going to go through our business and committee reports. We're going to talk a little bit here about ways to get involved with INC this year. And then we have a great program lined up on reaching diverse communities. Then we're going to try to get everybody out of here by 11. And so I apologize, but I'm going to have to leave after kind of the first announcements here. But I think Lamone and Judy are going to do a rock star job. So just a few things coming up here. Big thing here is time to renew your RNO membership with the City of Denver if you haven't done so already. And again, there's links in the agenda that I just posted in the chat. You can go there and click on a link and you can go straight to where you need to register your RNO with the city. I believe that, again, that's a free registration. You just need to make sure you do it by the 31st. Otherwise, I think they do have another registration period, but it's not until July. So make sure you're getting that done and getting all your paperwork done for that. Is there anything else anybody has on that? Renewing with the city?
The only thing I would say, Keith, is that for our election purposes, anybody who's running your RNO needs to be in good standing with the city in order to be a nominee for this. And I'll review that again. So, but this is important from an INC perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've renewed ours, just so everybody knows.
Great.
We've gotten
Thanks
that.
again. And Judy did that for us, so thanks, Judy. And then, kind of big news is we have a new registration portal for INC this year that we're hoping is going to be easier for RNOs, a little cleaner, a clean payment method. We are a couple of things I just wanted to note on this. And there's a link for this in the agenda as well that I put there. I just wanted to walk through a couple things, which is that are changes from previous years. The first thing is that we are going paperless this year, and so all registration needs to take place through this web portal. We're not taking paper applications or registration anymore. You can still send checks though. And so all you need to do is walk through the portal. If your RNO sends checks, you just walk through the portal, register, and at the very end on the payment page, you just need to indicate that you're going to send a check. And there's our address and everything is on there as well. And so as your RNO is kind of walking through that process in the next month or so, just know that you can still send checks if that's the way your RNO has done it in the past. We are accepting checks this year. We're going to kind of review that process after this year, but I think for now that's definitely what we're doing. Do prefer online payments. That makes things a lot easier for us on our end, and for our volunteer treasurer position. In the past, that's been Greg Sorensen, and we're looking at bringing on a new treasurer this year. But I think that that makes our life a lot easier if you're able to do it through an online payment. But we are still accepting checks this year. There's also a yearly renewal membership. So if you want to avoid this hassle every year, you can just sign up to auto renew every year as well, and that's a feature on that as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to. You can reach out to myself, which is the president at denverinc.org, if you have any questions about it. So, thanks a lot. Is this committee reports? Yeah, is Joel on? I don't know if Joel Noble is on. All right, not hearing from Joel. I believe there's a message that I just saw in the chat about the membership, if it's tax deductible. Greg, I'm probably not the right person to answer that. I would say yes, but Greg, do you know if our memberships are tax deductible?
Yeah, since we're a 501c3, your membership is tax deductible if your RNO pays taxes, but I don't know why that would be.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg. And Joel, I don't think Joel's on today. I do know that transportation had a really phenomenal meeting that just happened last week. I know somebody was there, I think from the state, a couple of maybe, I don't know if it's the federal BRT. There's probably people that can answer this question.
Yeah. Keith, just to note, I think it was Brian Wilson who posted the link to the INC Transportation Committee meeting
Okay.
in the chat.
Actually, it's a letter. I believe I don't know if there was another link to the meeting, but the meeting that just it's a letter to sign on to about I forget what they're called, but they go to block throughway streets for bikes and stuff. It's a great letter, and I strongly support what Alan Kaigo is trying to do. So,
yeah, thanks. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Sure. So moving on, let's go to the zoning and planning. Amber, are you on?
Yep.
Great.
Good morning, everybody. We had a great meeting in December. It was right before the holidays. We had Councilwoman Torres come and speak about the first phase of the Elitch redevelopment. And then we had Kyle Dalton from CPD talk about highlights from 2024, a little bit about what's on their agenda for 2025, and then simplifying the zoning code, trying to get everybody, they're calling it one code. So what that's going to look like, we're actually going to be sending out the meeting and the presentations early next week. So look for that. If you're not on our zoning and planning email list and want to be, I'll put my email in the chat and you can send me an email and we'll get you on that list. And then we're having a great meeting in February. It's going to be on the 25th, which is Tuesday. We're switching over to Tuesdays. Joel Cox, the new co-chair, has a heavy school schedule on Wednesday and Thursday. So we're going to be switching our meetings to Tuesday. And we're going to be talking about what's on the state legislative agenda, zoning and planning wise, which I'm really excited to announce that construction defects are going to be back at the state level, which I think could be a great not resource, but a great tool for getting some affordable housing back in Colorado, or back in Denver specifically, but in Colorado in general. So we're going to start sending out the Zoom update as soon as I finalize the agenda. And then in April, we're going to have an affordable 2 hours of affordable housing. And then our June meeting and this is going to be every fourth Tuesday going forward. We're hoping for June to do a field trip. We're hoping to do a historic agenda with a walking tour. So if you're not on our list and want to be, I'll put my email in the chat and send me an email and we'll get you on our email list.
Great.
Great. Thanks so much, Amber. Yeah, and now I just want to move on to talking about some ways that folks can get involved with INC this year. Like I said before, this is a big year for INC. It's our 50th anniversary year, which is pretty incredible. And, we are looking for a lot of folks that want to, be part of that process this year and be part of celebrating neighborhoods and 50 years of advocating for neighborhoods. And so we have a number of different ways that RNOs can get involved and individuals can get involved with INC in 2025. And I just want to kind of walk through some of those for a brief few minutes here before we move on to our program. So the first thing is, and then maybe I'll just flip this over to you, Judy, if you'd like to talk about the elections and Board of Directors openings.
Sure. And I did have some slides, but you have everything on here that we really need to, let's see. Yeah, that we have 3 at-large Board of Directors positions. One of them is for 1 year. It's a current vacancy and it has a term of 1 year. And we are in the midst of talking with potential candidates, but are interested in having nominees for that. Our vice president position is that Lamone is currently filling and is running for again. So that term is up and she is running for re-election. And the treasurer position occupied so well for so many years by Greg Sorensen. Greg is retiring from that position, so we are in search of a treasurer, someone who'd like to fill that with, and it's a hard shoes to fill, just saying, but we are in conversation with folks who might be interested in that. So just some of the timing. This is an important announcement. We've been making announcements since, I guess, November, December, that we have board positions open. And nominations can be taken from the floor at the February meeting on February 8th. That's the last time they can be taken from the floor. In other words, they can't be taken from the floor on election day. Nominations can be accepted up until 2/20, and the process by which we will go through that is talking with interested people, talking about the positions, ensuring that they are a delegate of a RNO in good standing. That means that they are members of INC and that they are registered with the city. Those are the 3 requirements for candidates to be appropriate nominees. And if they are still interested, we'll, after giving them job descriptions and some information about what it means to be on the board, we'll ask them for a brief statement for their vision of how they can engage with INC and what they want to do. And then we will publish those statements in advance of the elections at the March meeting. Have I missed anything there? Any questions about that?
I think, Judy, we've had a couple of questions in the chat, and I
Okay.
just want to kind of, and I can flip this back to you, but I do, the process of becoming a delegate, because I think there's a couple of questions about how people become delegates and, what are delegates. And delegates have traditionally been roles that RNOs themselves have chosen up to 2 delegates to be delegates to INC. And so you really need to touch base with your RNO if that's something that you're interested in, and see first if they are an RNO that's a member of INC. and is also, if they have delegates, and if not, if you can become a delegate. But for folks that that sounds like a confusing process. If you are on this meeting and you don't know, like even maybe who your RNO might be or how to get in touch with them, please let us know, and we can help facilitate that process as well, in terms of making sure that we can try to connect you with whoever it might be that's your RNO president or an RNO that you want to be a part of, and then if whether or not they already have delegates or if they have an open delegate position as well. Judy, was there anything else? Yeah.
The one thing I just want to also encourage people who are on here, which is you don't have to be a delegate to participate in committee meetings and to work with the committees. The co-chairs need to be delegates, but to be part of a committee and to be helpful on a committee, that doesn't require delegate status. It's a good way to get involved, in other words, in that way. Okay.
Great,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions?
I think that's all for now on delegates and board of director positions. So
Well, there's one question I keep seeing coming up from Brian Wilson about the requirement of the elections, a board of directors. So to clarify, the INC, we are not the bosses, is that correct?
Right.
We don't tell RNOs what to do. Is that correct?
correct.
They operate on their bylaws. So when they run their elections, how they choose to do it, it should be spelled out in their bylaws. INC specifically is here for the purpose of providing training and support, addressing current events, etc. But in terms of how each RNO runs, that's up to their board and as specified in their bylaws.
Thanks, Lamone. That's a great explanation of that.
Mm-hmm.
And bylaws are required for registration with the city. And so that's one of the cascading connections to the city. All right, moving right along. Here you go, Keith.
Perfect, great. So last year, I kind of looked at a lot of different things that INC does that's a little bit outside of the normal committee work and the board of director work, and kind of bundled this all under one theme, which is really the outreach and events that we do. And so there's a lot of things that we do throughout the year that are pretty amazing things that are opportunities to become involved more with INC and with the work that we're doing with neighborhoods. And I really just want to put that out there, that if there's folks that are interested in being involved, maybe you don't want to be on the board or but you want to maybe be involved with some event that we're putting on. These are the events that we're doing throughout the year. We have like I said, we're very excited about this film fest that's coming up. We're going to do our RNO 101 lab again in September. And then obviously the annual awards celebration is something that we've done for a very long time and is a really great part of this organization. And I just, to share a personal thing from the award ceremony that just happened, I shared this with the board. We really celebrated the kids that were involved with the Spiral Garden in Montbello. And one of the things that their director emailed me last year was that these kids have never been recognized for anything of this sort, and they've never participated in like an award ceremony or being part of a big event like this. And so it was a really special thing for all of them to do and come and be a part of. And they just want to send a big thank you to INC for putting that on. So that was just one of the things that happened last year. And so we also have Jane Potts is going to be running our youth awards this summer or this year again, and that's a grant program that we do. If you want to go back up.
Sorry.
Yep. if Jane Potts is going to be running our Youth Awards program, which is a grant program that we do. And we're trying to get that rolled out this spring, hopefully. And again, if you know of any organizations, youth organizations that are, kind of civic focused and are doing some really good things in their community that could use some extra funding, that's what that's for. And then we're also, one thing that we started reconnecting with, which was sponsors and sponsorships last year for INC, and I think that's what we're going to do again this year. And so if anybody's got a keen interest in fundraising, we are going to be doing that again as well this year. And I think I want to go back in that because it wasn't on that slide. Greg, I know that you had something to present. Maybe we'll just do that after the end of this kind of stuff that we're talking about getting involved. I think we'll just go to you, Greg, right before that. So Judy, if you want to go to the next slide. We also have a great program that we started, I believe, either last year or maybe the year before. But if your RNO is interested in hosting an in-person monthly INC community meeting, we would love to hear from you. And so again, there's some contact information on the agenda that, excuse me, I've posted in the chat on who to contact about that. But we're more than happy to pay $250, $300 if you're in a Nest neighborhood to an RNO that wants to host a community connection, a monthly community connection. We actually still have some slots available this year for that. So just feel free to reach out. You just need to find a venue, do refreshments and coffee in the morning on a Saturday, and help with kind of connecting around what the theme of the event is going to be in your neighborhood. And finally, I think there was one more slide after that. Maybe go. Sorry, if you go back up, Judy. Nope. Keep going. Maybe that's it then. Maybe it was hosting just in the Youth Awards. I think that was the last thing. It's just at the Youth Awards. And if people want to get involved with the Youth Awards and those grants, that's great. So now let's, I think Greg has something to share, Judy.
Okay.
So if you want to take or stop sharing and let him.
Yep.
Great.
There you go.
Greg, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can everyone see this? This is a quick summary for 2024. Operating funds.
Is there a way you can make it a little bit bigger, Greg?
I will try to do that.
Maybe down in the lower right-hand corner. Is that the Zoom?
Yeah.
Can you see that?
There we go.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a summary for 2024. We had $46,889 in operating funds, and our community fund was $14,210.64. Income for the operating fund, we had $491 in interest. Award sponsorship, this was for the main awards event, was $21,520.80, thanks largely to Jane Lorimer, who lined up sponsors. For the RNO 101 and Art Fest sponsorships, it was $3,500. RNO memberships, $1,969.78, and associate memberships, $1,275. Donations amounted to $628. So total income for the year was $29,385.59. Expenses for the awards event, it was about $9,000. For the RNO 101 lab, $1,400. Communications and media, this includes MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, website, Zoom license, was $1,612. Bank fees, about $100. Insurance, $1,474. Meetings and forums, $844. Office expenses, $1,114. So total expenses for the year were $15,501.32. So income was $13,884.27. A quick review of the community fund. These are funds that are kept separate from the operating funds, and they're donated specifically for charitable works. So our balance forward was $16,816. We had interest income of $520 and donations of $525. Charitable donations, $150 to Mount St. Vincent, $500 to Denver Decides, and then $3,000 for Youth Civic Engagement Awards. So total expenses were $3,650.99, and we carried over $14,210.64 to 2025 for our community works. Any questions? Okay, thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks so much, Greg. Definitely want to just take a minute to recognize Greg for all the work that he's done for INC for quite a long time, and we really, really appreciate it. Kept our financial books in order. I can't thank you personally enough for staying on for the last couple of years, but
Thank you.
I really just want to say how much we all appreciate all the work you've done. Greg's going to be stepping off the board in March, at the end of March, and we really appreciate everything that Greg's done. If you happen to have a love of finance and you want to talk to us, that's great. We have a couple people that we've talked about taking on the treasurer position, but we're also, still putting the feelers out there too. So thanks again, Greg. And with that, I'll just kind of turn it over to Judy and Lamone, and thank everybody for coming today.
Thank you. So now for the program, Reaching Diverse Communities. Again, my name is Lamone Knowles. I'm Vice President of Denver Inc., President of the East Denver Residents Council, and also Chair of the DEI Committee, and I will serve as your moderator for today's program. We are very excited to welcome guest speakers from Radian, the Office of Social Equity, and our own Judy Baxter, who will present the results of the RNO 101 workshop findings. All will discuss strategies and best practices for engaging diverse communities in your neighborhoods, whether you're a neighborhood leader, a city official, or someone who is passionate about creating inclusive spaces. This session will provide valuable insights and tools for strengthening connections in our neighborhoods. Our presenters for today for the RNO 101 workshop is Judy Baxter, and she's on our DEI committee. The Radian Equity Toolkit will be presented by Ann Dang and Dee Dee Diverse from Radian. And then information about the Denver Office of Social Equity will be presented by Daylene Mix. And I see all three are here. If you have your slides, feel free when it's your turn to go ahead and run your slides. And their presentations will be about 20 minutes each because we're kind of conscious of time. And if there are questions from the audience, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if we can't get them answered during the session, we will follow up on our website, okay? So for now, I want to introduce Judy Baxter, who's going to present the INC 101 workshop findings.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And what I want to do today is present in a follow-up to the brainstorming workshop session, our RNO 101 brainstorming workshop session that we had in the middle of June of this last year. And some of what we've discovered out of that is stimulus for today's program. So many of you might have been there, but many of you might not have been there. We had a brainstorming session together with another concurrent session that was going to that Lou Raiders and Lamone put on. But on the brainstorming session, we had two parts to it. One was a question. It was in a two-part survey. We had 21 respondents, and it was to ask what the major purposes and foci of the RNO that they represented, what they were, and then to rank the top priorities. The second part of this brainstorming session was to have a small group activity. It's known as a nominal group, where we had 26 participants across 2 sessions. And that was to better understand the challenges of running their RNO and prioritizing those challenge areas. And what I'm going to describe today are the findings from each of those. And so the RNO Purpose Survey asks this question: thinking about the RNO you represent or are a member of, which of the following represents your RNO's purpose and focus? And there was given a list, and then they were asked to please rank those purpose areas in terms of their top 2, where time and energy was spent. And I'm going to try to launch a poll. Before I give you those results, I would love to use this forum of 40. We have 40 participants here, and I'm going to launch a poll for you, which is essentially asking the same question. So if you could take a look at this, this is a check all that apply. About what your organization, what your RNO, what you think your RNO's primary purposes or foci are. And you can start seeing the information coming in. How many responses do we have? Then coming in, we're up to 17 respondents. Again, check all that apply. Let's give it another minute or so, and then I'm going to ask you to rank which of these areas that you checked, and only you know, this is a confidential poll. I don't know who's saying what, but I'm going to ask you to rank which is the top, the number 1 area or purpose in terms of time and energy spent. $24. Five. Okay. Okay. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds. We're at 26. 10 more seconds.
We have a question from Alejandra.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So are you asking me what is currently the purpose or how my RNO is currently working, or are you asking me what I think it should be?
I'm asking you what it currently is, what your RNO's what the purpose or purposes are of your RNO.
Yeah, how it currently operates right now.
Yeah.
How currently
What's your
operates.
RNO's
Okay.
current mission?
Not sure it's very well established. That's
That's
yeah.
it might be other if it's not clear. That's okay. All right. I'm going to end that poll and share the results there. And so as you can see, the results here are that 81% as to organize informational forums on topics important to the neighborhood. Really close to that, organized advocacy related to specific issues of concern, and to plan, deliver gatherings for social events. And there's clearly some other pieces in here of represent the community on task forces and represent the neighborhood to Denver planning. So, all right. So, all right, let's see. Now I'm going to try download the results. Hold on a second. And stop share. Let's see. Back. And what I'd like to know is okay. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty knowing how to get to my second question, but we're going to move on because can you still see my my Zoom poll slide? So those results really reflect very clearly the same kinds of answers that we got from the RNO workshop. And here, planning and delivering community gatherings, which was second or third, was also second or so. Here, organize informational forums, which was the top one, was the top percent ranking that. This column represents that. And organize and advocate for issues specific concern to the neighborhood. So those three were also the top three mentioned at the workshop. And you can see how they were ranked. Number one, in terms of the number one place, the 1 or 2 place that the RNO is spending energies, because we do more than one thing. So in summary, that's that these three, including with your information, tend to be the kind of primary focus, with some other important elements to why we exist, what we're doing, what our primary missions are, and where our foci are. So this helps INC kind of learn how to best support you. The second part of our session was 2 sessions. It was this group brainstorming session. Sorry, I'm a little nervous for some reason. Okay, it was a group brainstorming session. There were 2 sessions, and within each session there were 2 groups working and the groups were working together. So we had 4 groups overall. So the question that was asked is, what are the most important challenges that you have running your RNO? And the first part of the process is what I call a 1-7 all. First, an individual writes down their answers, their own answers to that question for their RNO. And then in a group of 7 or 6, depending upon which session they were in, they shared all of their ideas until they had a complete list that reflected everyone's ideas about the most important challenges to their RNOs. And then then we brought 2 groups together, and we created a combined list. So we ended up with 2 combined lists from 26 people that reflected everyone's opinions about that. And the second part of the process was then taking in each group, having them using colored dots that represented different point values. We had them assign the top 1, 2, and 3 challenges, priorities, and challenges that they were facing out of all of these very important challenges that they listed. So that's, and this is not, I'm not asking you to read this because I'll make it better here in a minute, but this is the worksheet that the data entered worksheet that I create based on all of that information, their lists and their coded dots. And what came out of that is that for this is the first group of 14 people, and this is the second group of 14 people. And these are the elements that came up and were ranked in the top 4 issues. And then you start to see, I hope you can see this, that there are some themes that emerged here through this process. And in both groups, the theme that showed up most often and was ranked number 1 was this notion of equitable engagement, equitable outreach, inclusion of the broad populations that might be in their neighborhoods. And it was also about knowing and understanding who was in their neighborhoods so that they could actually do intentional inclusion and equity. And so community engagement. So these statements in both groups were the top ones. The next level was working with the city bureaucracy related to infrastructure, safety, neighborhoods, crime, working with the city and county of Denver. And so that was the kind of the second area that I'm listing. And then the third area is a kind of operational. There's 2 themes in the third area. One is around the operational expenses, fundraisers, finding sponsorships, volunteers, and over here it's called fundraising, creating membership value. And then the second part of running the RNO is really the building of the RNO. It's board recruitment, succession planning, the engagement of people and volunteers, and really creating that connection, that community connection, both internally and externally. So those are the top 3 areas. Again, to summarize, equitable outreach, engagement, and inclusion in the RNO's mission and activities, what this kind of looked like, working with the city and county of Denver and departments and agencies, both generally as well as around issues of planning and safety, and building their RNO organization. And I think, frankly, Denver INC feels this the same way. We face these same challenges as a larger kind of organization. So it was interesting to see these reflected. So next steps planned. We are planning a survey to be administered January through March of 2025. It'll go out to all neighborhood RNOs that are registered with the city, not just with INC. So regardless of INC membership, we're going to send the survey out to all RNOs to get a wider sample to verify, again, somewhat like we just did on the poll here, to verify and add depth to the results that we presented today. It will be short, easy to complete, about 5-7 minutes. And we'll ask these same questions and a few others, but about the RNO purpose, about the current challenges so that we can gauge our programming really and gain some insight about that, and suggestions about how INC can support RNOs in general, because I'm sure there's some creative ideas sitting out there amongst all of you all, as well as others who might not actually currently be engaged in INC. Our goal here is to make sure that we're really representing the diversity of the RNOs that are out there, not just our membership. And so these results, I can't wait for us to get on. But so these results led to us starting to build our programming for this year that Keith has done such a great job at showing us to address the top challenges articulated by participants, and thus today's session. So equitable inclusion and more to come in 2025, our 50th year. And I think there's some questions in the chat. Lamone, I'm gonna let you take it over from there and sort of guide me to questions, if there are any. You're welcome, Ellen. I'm happy to give the summary, and I want to send this out to, we will post this summary on the website and also send out to all the participants who were part of that.
And there was a question about the survey. Is it going to the board or everyone in the RNO?
That's a great question, Ashley. Thank you. We will be sending that to the designated person so I will use the city's RNO registry. And they have, whenever you have to register your RNO, you have to put in your primary contact persons. It's frequently the president, but not always. But there'll be one person for each RNO who can represent and answer these questions. We're trying to get a nice, both the broad spectrum, but also not have one RNO have more than one voice. We want to get that picture from an RNO group perspective. Does that make sense? So that's where I'm going to get the RNO contact information is from the city registry of RNOs, and go from there.
But what about the RNOs that don't meet very frequently, or their communications are not standardized, but there are members who want to get involved with this survey?
Yeah, that would be up to those RNOs, and that from my perspective, if I'm getting the way it would work is, say I'm the president of a not very frequently meeting RNO, and I get this email with a survey request. And it is up to that person to decide how best they want to engage their RNO to answer the survey. And because we're really asking about the RNO, not the individual members at this point. We're trying to get that RNO perspective as a group. There is a really important place, Lamone, to reach out and to connect more on a one-on-one basis. I think our next engagement strategy is to work with RNOs and sort of connect up with people that we don't hear from very often, and to set up more of a personal one-on-one connection, and to understand what's going on in different RNOs. But if I were a person on this meeting and I wanted to get involved or have my voice be in the response to this survey, I would contact the president of my RNO sometime in about a week or 2 weeks, that when they're going to get and say, you're going to get a survey and I'd like to help. I'm interested. That's what I would do. Anything else? Lamone, you're on mute.
All right. So, are there any other questions or comments before we move to the next?
I had a question. This is Ellen Roth from South City Park. I wondered if we could get, I'm assuming all get this survey, but I wondered if we could get like like a paper copy too, so that way if we want to solicit feedback from our neighbors through our own survey or through, questions in a newsletter at a meeting, we could know what they are before we go in to like take the survey. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it does. It's a good question, Ellen. I hadn't thought about that. And let me give it some thought. We could think about sending out with the email a not just the link to the Survey Monkey, which it will be the official collector, but we could send out a basically a Word document, right? In the email that has the questions.
Yeah, that would be great. Just a way that we could sort of preview them so that
Yeah,
way
no, that's a
we have
terrific
an
suggestion.
opportunity to solicit feedback.
Terrific suggestion. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you doing this work. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, takes a village, right? And we have a
Yeah,
good one. We have a good one. We're building a nice village here.
we're building it. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna quit sharing and Lamone, let you introduce the next folks.
Okay. So our next presenters are with the group called Radian, and they do equitable community planning in neighborhoods. And they did a research project that produced their RNO Equity Toolkit. So our presenters today will be Ann Dang and Dee Dee DeVoist, and I will turn the conversation over to them. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, everyone. We're here to present equitable engagement strategies and really diverse recruitment under the umbrella of a long-term project called the RNO Equity Toolkit. I feel like the red on the page is making my face red. So next slide in. I'm not this
Okay,
ready.
sorry about that.
There we go. Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank Inc. for having us. We've had a long-term partnership, and I think I recognize some faces here from some of the events that we've been to collaborating with them, and also some of our RNO Equity Toolkit projects. But briefly, I'll introduce our organization. Like Lamone said, Radian is Colorado's only nonprofit architecture and urban design group. Our mission is solely to advance social equity in the built environment. And we do that through different community engagement and partnership activities and offering design and technical assistance to community groups. And our overarching vision is we envision a world where residents, and specifically those who've been traditionally underrepresented in design and planning, have the agency, power, and resources they need to shape their own communities and neighborhood. And that's sort of, what has led us to this project called the RNO Equity Toolkit. Oh, and I guess I'll briefly introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Dee Dee. I'm the executive director of Radian, and then also Ann Dang, who is one of the co-leads of the RNO Equity Toolkit, will be co-presenting with me. Many of you may have also met Aaliyah Evison, who is one of the co-leads on this project. And then we also have Ana Colon Quinones, who is our designer and community engagement specialist. And then a brief overview of the work, just the methodology and what we've done thus far. I think some of you know this already, but I'll be very brief. We've been working on this project since about 2019, 2020. Phase one, we really focused on the neighborhoods of West Colfax and Villa Park as a pilot study. The reason this came to be is we were partnering with an organization called the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative that works in the 9 neighborhoods of West Denver. And they said every RNO within their district had requested support in the equity space and trying to increase representation of their RNOs, of their neighbors. So we initially partnered with those 2 neighborhoods, and we really did a lot of deep data collection, so a demographic data collection and analysis study, trying to understand in these neighborhoods who lives in the neighborhoods and then who is represented or not represented in the RNO's leadership, membership, and participation. So there was it was a very data heavy phase one. We also we collaborated with the RNOs on distributing bilingual surveys, both paper and electronic. A lot of this landed in 2020. So we were doing everything as hybrid as possible to make sure that we could do a robust amount of outreach to get some feedback from the neighbors. We also collaborated with community navigators. And those are folks who generally are able to kind of reach out to folks that are harder to reach, maybe people who don't speak English, people who had not heard of RNOs, those sorts of things. And so by collecting data through community navigators, we were able to get some great feedback from people who are not involved in RNOs. And then with them, we co-created some solutions and recommendations that were tailored to these neighborhoods. So that was just phase one. Phase two, we followed that up. We expanded throughout West Denver. We started working with RNOs one-on-one, doing some consulting, working with them on some equity action plans and really getting them to further define their mission, vision, and values. We also facilitated an RNO grant program where we distributed about $30,000 to RNOs to help them implement some of the co-created recommendations. And then it all ended in sort of a published book or a booklet called the RNO Equity Toolkit that Anne will talk a little bit more about later. And then phase three has been kind of like 2024's work that we've done. We've expanded the project citywide. And so we've been performing a lot of RNO equity training events. This includes our RNO Equity Summit that we hosted at our co-working space. Also, a few training events that we've done in collaboration with INC. We hosted 3 RNO equity dinners last year that some of you were at. And then we continue to provide one-on-one RNO consulting, and we're expanding to figuring out what does a partnership with the city look like, and how can we, cement some of these recommendations into city policy and RNO reform.
And this is an image of our RNO Equity Toolkit. We had 2 booklets. The red booklet is in English, and then the orange booklet was in Spanish. And it was essentially a workbook for RNO members to facilitate and talk about equity. And so we had different sections, and each section at the end had questions to help guide and facilitate that conversation. And the RNO Equity Toolkit is also available online on our website, which I will provide the information later on in this presentation for you to reference. And as you all know, RNOs play an important role in shaping Denver's neighborhoods and aligning with our mission to advance social equity within the built environment. We aim to collaborate with RNOs to make sure that there's fair and inclusive representation of your communities. So our objectives with partnering with RNOs are to address the lack of representation and diversity within RNOs, within the leadership and membership of the organization, co-design RNO reform with RNOs. And so really asking the question, how can we structurally change how RNOs run to become more equitable? We've done pilot interventions and resources on a smaller scale to make sure to scale it citywide. Since RNO is a nonprofit organization, we are able to access grant funding, which allows us to be very flexible, and we're able to try new ideas and pivot if needed as needed for our work with RNOs. And we'd like to decrease silos to strengthen support for equitable RNOs. So the city, INC, and Radian have previously pursued RNO work independently, but we're trying to break down those silos to streamline access to resources and to make it easier for our RNOs to find support.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Ahead.
Well, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, good. No, you go ahead.
I guess we just had a few disclaimers at the beginning. And one is just to remember there's no one size fits all solutions. We know all of your neighborhoods are very different. We know all of your RNOs are very different. And so there are no one size fits all solutions. And so everything that we talk about today should really be tailored to your neighborhood. And then also just understanding your community, your culture, your neighborhood a little bit better, and like reaching out to folks who are maybe within your RNO, outside of your RNO, and making sure they're involved in kind of the co-creation of what these next steps look like for you all. And then also is just keeping in mind that integrating any kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion work into your organization or board, it's a very long-term commitment. It's a very slow-moving commitment. And so I think some people think to see results, or they get frustrated if they don't see results very quickly. And it's really a long-term and iterative commitment. And it's going to take a lot of time. And I really don't view this work as having a key destination, but really just a long-term evolution of making progress and making improvements. And then I guess the other thing I'll say before we jump into some more concrete recommendations is that I know there's a full spectrum of folks on the call and in RNOs in general who have different experience levels in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for some people, this might be very basic. For others, this might be very overwhelming. And just know that we're committed to continuing this work through 2025. We'll have additional trainings and we can have one-on-one conversations and things like that. We don't have to cover everything today. But the recommendations that we're covering, I just want to acknowledge have been co-created with the RNOs that we've been working with. And that's part of Radian's equity practice is co-design and co-creation. We never come into a room and say, you know, we're the experts, this is what you should be doing, but this is a very collaborative process. And so everything that we do is, you know, really being informed by the RNOs that we've worked with so far. So I'll start with just diversity and representation in general. The first thing you need to do is identify the demographic gaps in your RNO and also prioritize board positions representing these demographic gaps. For us, that could be demographic gaps that are related to race and ethnicity. It could be age, it could be socioeconomic status. One thing we see a lot with RNOs are owners versus renters. What is the role of renters in RNOs? Maybe reaching out to senior living centers, affordable housing complexes, things like that. So your board can discuss what those gaps look like for you all. We also think it's really important to empower individuals in RNO meetings to lead new initiatives that are important to them. Sometimes RNOs can get like kind of hyper-focused on certain things. And as you start to diversify your board members and leadership, there potentially will be new initiatives and new ideas that are priorities for others. And I think that's a really great thing. But just being open to that. And then collectively review bylaws, reimagine future policies, and co-develop an RNO meeting agreement. We do understand that as you start to diversify your RNO, you're bringing on people with different lived experiences, different perspectives. And so there will be a cultural shift of your RNO where you'll have to create space for disagreements, different perspectives, and make sure it's a safe place to engage in those conversations. The worst case scenario is to actually diversify your RNO and make it so that the culture doesn't have a sense of belonging. So those are just general recommendations.
And the next section is community awareness of RNOs. And so the first bullet point is to leverage outreach with local organizations, institutions, community groups, and community navigators. And so essentially, you know, RNOs shouldn't be the only place for resources. You could, you know, work with schools, churches, and other organizations that are doing similar work to help pursue more equity. And then another one is to create more opportunities to build relationships with community members outside of RNO meetings. And so just providing more ways to connect with the community, such as block parties and volunteering. And then attending existing community events and gatherings to introduce the RNO to the community. So instead of creating a whole new separate event to plan, it's better to just work and collaborate with existing community events to reduce the event fatigue on the planning end and also the people who are attending the events.
Great. And then I know we've touched a lot on language access and language justice in general with the INC members, but generally, you know, you have to decide for your own neighborhood is, you know, interpretation and translation skills. Are those needed? In some neighborhoods, maybe they're not. In some neighborhoods, maybe you would include Spanish, and in others, you might include many other languages or American Sign Language. But just being aware that sometimes an English only RNO meeting can create barriers and also dissuade different groups of folks who prefer to speak a different language. So I would do an analysis with your RNO and your board to understand in your neighborhood, would it be helpful and important to have interpretation and translation as a standard service? And if it is, I would say including it at all of your meetings, all of your events, and then making sure your marketing and outreach materials are also in those languages. We know it is a heavy lift, and it's going to require some kind of funding and resources. But some neighborhoods really benefit from that and are able to become a little bit more bilingual and diversify their membership and leadership through those means.
And next section is the RNO meeting subject matter. Just being able to regularly poll the community to identify which topics are important to them, because also people come and go and the interests of the community might change over time. And collaborating with local organizations to present on new topics at RNO meetings and events. So having guest speakers come in and present at your RNO meetings are great. And facilitating bilingual community events and small groups outside of the RNO meetings that focus on special interests. So not just community events, but you could host smaller focus groups to really have more in-depth feedback through an interview.
Yes, and we also included digital divide as a lot of our work took place in 2020. And so as we're all moving to sort of a more virtual format for the RNO meetings, we did find that in a lot of neighborhoods, there are a lot of community groups that maybe, lack access to internet or don't have the skills. So we found, maybe a lot of seniors weren't able to navigate Zoom or those sorts of things. So we really landed on, we think the future of all meetings and RNO meetings are hybrid. As you want to increase accessibility with timing and other factors, the advantage of being online is really important, but we also know being in person helps build trust and build relationships, and that's really important too. So finding the right balance for your RNO, I think is really important, but we decided, everything should be hybrid as far as having your meetings and events. Also, that goes out for newsletters and surveys. We did a lot of surveying during this work, and we did receive a lot of feedback electronically, but there were many neighborhoods that really benefited from hard copies of surveys. And so that was a little bit of an extra lift on the RNO's end to disseminate those hard copy surveys, collect them, and then enter the data manually. And so we do know it makes it a little bit harder, but offering kind of some flexibility around electronic versus in-person versus hard copy. And then I guess just connecting residents to local organizations and facilities that have technology access. That could be public libraries. But if they are interested in joining in on a virtual call, I think the public library can really help support them in that. We also talked a lot about just having a landing page that hosts RNO meeting recordings, meeting minutes, and surveys online. We do know not everybody is able to show up to the RNO meeting at that specific day and time and location. And so just offering ways for people to maybe on their own time catch up, and maybe they can come to the next one. So just giving a lot of flexibility in the virtual space, I think, has been really helpful.
Yeah, it actually leads to the next slide, which Didi had already mentioned, was just the flexibility and timing and how that relates to having digital resources. And so really having ways for people to engage passively through the website. If you have meeting minutes, a record of the meeting, and just ways for people to fill out the survey in person or digitally on their own time. Since people do have different work schedules, they might be attending to their kids. There's just different ways to accommodate for the community. And also to be able to collect feedback outside of R&O meetings. And so this really goes back to, having community meetings and events to gather feedback that way.
Yeah, and briefly, we talked a lot with these R&Os about supportive services that might help more people show up to meetings or more people feel a sense of welcoming and belonging. Things that have been mentioned in West Denver, childcare services was a big one. I think, parents really struggle to, find a babysitter or whatever if they want to show up in person. Food or light refreshments always comes up. I think when you're thinking about developing community and building community, food is central to that. And so if there can be a budget for offering that, it also attracts people to come in person and maybe have, side conversations and things like that. Certainly interpretation services, which we mentioned, but I think your board can be really creative about what supportive services look like for you all. If there's a group of people who maybe have trouble accessing the physical location or don't have the ability to commute, maybe you could have sort of a transportation service or a carpool service. I think just being really creative about what your community needs to get them to the R&O meetings and make them feel very welcome.
And lastly, the physical location of the R&O meetings or events are important as well. So having a neutral, centrally located space where people feel welcome, so such as libraries, community centers, rec centers. I think churches, some people have different beliefs, and so that might not be considered a neutral space to some people. Having a place that is ADA accessible, so not having many stairs to go up to the entrance is a big one. And just being able to access through public transportation. So if there are bus stops nearby, that would be helpful for people to get to the meeting. And having the space be accessible to technology, so that way it can accommodate for hybrid meetings, and a space that has parking for people to park to go to the meeting.
Great. And that's all we have for concrete recommendations. But as far as 2025 and the work Radian has ahead, we'll continue doing R&O presentations and training events. We hope to continue the R&O Equity Summit and dinner series and consulting. So just stay tuned for those sorts of things. We're also actively working with various city departments on how we can work together and encourage the city to provide the resources needed. Some of these recommendations are resource intensive, some of them are not, but we do acknowledge that R&Os need additional support to be able to become more inclusive and representative. And so we'll be working with the city on that. Yeah, and then we'll be continuing to work with INC. It's been such a great partnership and we're so grateful for being able to speak at some of the training events and get the word out about how to do this. And so we're so glad that you all are prioritizing this work. It's really important and it's really challenging. And so I think it's best that we do it together.
And in our R&O Equity Toolkit at the end, we had a resource library. And in that resource library, there are books, publications, videos and podcasts and training courses. And please feel free to scan this QR code on the screen here. This takes you to the links that are in that resource library. And I'll just give people a moment to do that. But our toolkit is also online, and so you can also access these things. I noticed that there were some people in the chat that had mentioned getting access to these slides. We will share it to INC so that they could distribute it to everyone. And so some of the books here you could see is Design Justice by Sasha Constanza Chalk, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown, Palaces for the People by Eric Klinenberg. We had hosted a book club at Radian on that book. The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and When We Walk by Donald W. Burns and Kevin F. Adler. And lastly, we provided some ways for people to engage with Radian. So our website is radianinc.org. And I had also provided Dee Dee and my email address if you ever want to reach out to us individually if you would want us to present at your R&O, please reach out. We've done that in the past. And we are also active on Instagram. So it's Radian_Denver and LinkedIn, which is just Radian. And now we'll just jump into the Q&A. So please, I don't know if Lamone, you want to be facilitating that and just letting us know which questions come up.
I will. There's two hands raised, and then there's a really good question in the chat. So why don't we address the two hands that are raised, starting with Judy.
Hi, thanks so much, Ann, Dee Dee, and for all your work. I had one question and a comment buried as a question. So, and I might have missed it at the beginning. How, in terms of finding out getting demographic information, sort of up to date demographic information, did you give some tips and pointers for understanding who is in your neighborhood, and how do you think about which of these strategies would be useful for people to try to reach different people, like seniors or different kinds of things? But just knowing who's in your neighborhood, it's changing a lot these days. How do we get up to date information?
Yeah, I'll start off. I know we used there's a lot of tools online that sort of publish US Census data. So that's, the most general and broad way to get information based off of the year of the US Census data. But, we have a lot more capacity to do deep dives around those kinds of things. And I do think people know who's in their neighborhood. I really do. And maybe there's, a few gaps here and there, but I feel like we've all been living in our neighborhoods long enough that it's kind of like we do kind of know who's there. They're not that big as far as neighborhoods. And so maybe having a conversation with your board and with your participants and kind of doing just a more general gaps analysis over conversation and just seeing where does that lead? Because I have a feeling you might know who's in your neighborhood.
Adding on to that is just distributing a demographic survey to the neighborhood and really just having a baseline and getting people to interact that way so you can have up-to-date information for that year. We had worked with the RNOs to come up with the demographic survey questions to help distribute. And the way to distribute the survey should be in multiple avenues. So it could be online, in person, physical mailers to people's homes, and just having different ways to put that information out there is so important. And having different locations. So the physical handouts could be located at a local library, coffee shop, business, where people tend to congregate.
Okay, great suggestion. And the other comment I had is that the cost of doing some of these things, even that kind of survey, both the volunteer, the time and energy costs, as well as the dollars and cents costs, can be one of the barriers, I think, for us to reach out, and sources of support for those kinds of things, even like interpretive services or babysit. Sometimes you can get some volunteers to do some of that, but that's not always available to us.
Yeah, so that's why we're trying to work with the city to come up with funding that is more consistent and sustainable, and to have, maybe a budget that's just set for interpretation and translation, and that is available for any RNOs to apply for or just to have. I think we're trying to work with the city to come up with these structural changes so that it be a consistent way to have funding, because we recognize that RNOs all are in different places and also have access to different types of funding, but we want to make sure that we have that set funding for people.
Thanks so
And
much.
I'll add, work with your city council members. We've actually gotten a lot of positive response from various city agencies and council members. And so we do think there's a lot of interest in this work. And I think the city does recognize that RNOs do need more resources. And so it sounds like something that they've been very receptive to, and we're looking forward to figuring that out in 2025 with them.
Okay, we have another question with Alejandra.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I'm having a hard time as a new-ish member of my RNO to get other people on board with this. We know that diversity and inclusion is a challenge. Surveys from our council person show that. Also, younger people, renters, all of these different things. But because many RNOs, leadership and board and committees are very entrenched historically, and a lot of people like myself don't have the time to be doing this work, and it's also emotionally taxing. As a woman of color, as an immigrant, as a person who has different views on how we should, diversify housing or move in our city and all of that. So and I've talked to other people who have been part and have left. So a lot of the administrative outreach work, yes, you do it. Yeah, that's great. We want to reach out to all these diverse people, but everybody who's been there for a while is really just focusing on opposing zoning, rezoning applications, or stuff that they really care about because they want to keep the character of their neighborhood intact. So how do we support people like me who want to really bring change but are tired, also have a full-time job and have families, and also is emotionally taxing to sort of deal with these barriers of trying to bring cultural change to an established RNO?
Yeah, I guess for me, I think all this work really does need to start with leadership and a deep commitment to it, because it's not something that just one person can pull their RNO along in. And so sometimes RNO boards need some beginning training, whether it's kind of like why this is important, what is the history of Denver. So certain educational resources just to understand why this matters and why it matters in their decision making. And so I think organizations like ours, Radian, and then INC, I think we're trying to figure out how to more support RNO boards who haven't fully bought into it, but also maybe need just some baseline information on why it's important, and also important in zoning and permitting and all of those sorts of decisions that they end up making. And I would also just, be really gentle on yourself. I know we're all aspiring for perfection, but I think we should just be aspiring for improvement and progress, and little by little. And so just know this is a huge endeavor. I would say lots of organizations and institutions and boards are trying to do this work right now. And we're doing it with the resources that we have, and not trying to make everything perfect. So good for you for being in that space and trying, and we're happy to connect offline to help support you specifically, and then also maybe create some strategies for conversations with the board on what is their level of commitment and how can we support them in moving forward.
Yeah, and I want to add that too is thank you for sharing, Alejandra. I think that's something that a lot of people are struggling to, just having the capacity to work on this, because RNO work is very complicated. And just what we mentioned too is that this is long-term work, and that it's not going to be solved easily and quickly. And we listed all these different strategies, but it's easier said than done. So that's something that we're just putting it out there, so at least people know, and that we're working towards making sure that we can work on this together.
Thank you.
All right, so I got one more question from the chat, and then we're going to move on to our next speaker. And your responses should be as brief as possible. The question, this is from Carol Hunter. She says, given the values and the conversation of the incoming administration, how is Radian, the INC, et cetera, positioning themselves against the threats of dissolution of DEI in so many realms? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, that has come up obviously very recently. So like I mentioned, Radian's mission is to advance social equity in the built environment. And so for us, it is our very existence. All of our projects are equity projects. And so I'm not so concerned on Radian's end. We're a nonprofit. We're doing what we're doing. We'll handle any challenge that comes our way. But at the end of the day, it's not something that we're that's on the side that we're just deciding to do in addition to our existence. It is our existence. And so we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and respond to anything as necessary. But I'm not personally too worried about it, but I have been reading a lot of articles. I would be interested, how is INC feeling about these changes?
Well, given that we're not government employees, we're not funded by the government in any way, this is an opportunity for we, the people, to get it right. So, regardless of what the chatter is in DC, the state, or the city, there's always been this undercurrent of racism anyway. But the work that we're going to be doing should supersede all of that. But it's up to the will of the people to do it. We don't need direction from the government or anyone else. We direct ourselves. So there will be people who are afraid of what the government's going to do. But at this point, I would say only the strong survive, and we will survive. Simple as that.
Great. Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time. And so right now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Daylene Mix. She is with the Denver Office of Social Equity, and she is going to speak about best practices. Daylene, are you ready?
I am. And
All
pardon
right.
me,
Thank you for waiting.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all for having us today. It's an honor.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to start off by saying our executive director for the Denver's Office of Social Equity and Innovation is Dr. Ben Sanders. Some of you may know him, and he deeply regrets that he wasn't able to be here himself with you today, and asked me to communicate his regrets. So I wanted to make sure I shared that, and forgive my little ineptness with technology. I am going to share my screen here. All right. And share. Okay, and it looks like you can see it now. I'm a little well, here we go. Thank you for your patience. Okay, just to kind of start over, my name is Daylene Mix. I'm one of the deputy executive directors, one of two in the Office of Social Equity and Innovation. It's an office that has been established since around 2018, and we continue to progress as things advance within the city and county of Denver around social equity and innovation needs. Here's an overview of our org chart. We have an Office of Social Equity and Innovation that is comprised of two different divisions. One of the divisions is the division that I am responsible for overseeing, and that is one of our newer divisions that actually was formed in May of 2024, and that's the Office of Neighborhood Safety. With that office, we are putting together right now, we're in the process of still gathering applications for a community advisory board. On the other side of the shop, we've got our equity and innovation side, and they also have a committee, a racial equity committee. And I highlight that because it is central to our office to make sure that we have community involvement and input into our decision making. So we have done that by making sure that that's implemented into our organizational structure, and wanted to highlight that here. In the Office of Neighborhood Safety, there are 4 areas of focus, which are those community violence solutions, youth programs, the AID Center, which stands for Assessment, Intake, and Diversion. That's an adult-only service center. And then STAR, which is our Support Team Assisted Response. And we only have a piece of that actually is managed by the Department of Public Health and Environment. But as it relates to dispatch and actual operations in that coordination and liaison with 911, that position resides within the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Over on the other side, we have more professional services that are available. And so, and really have been more internally focusing to city agencies up until this point. And those are comprised of the strategy and learning portion, the operations and innovation, the community and marketing, and then the data and evaluation. The two divisions that comprise the Office of Social Equity and Innovation are designed to support its overall mission and vision. That mission is to cultivate an equitable Denver by dismantling systemic barriers and creating targeted solutions for historically marginalized neighborhoods. Forgive me, that must have gotten a little bit of an error there. Oh, pardon me. And then the vision is to be a city where race and other social identities no longer predict life outcomes. Since we do have two separate divisions that make up the Office of Social Equity and Innovation, we also have more defined missions that are more at the micro level that do align with that macro mission and vision. And so we have those listed there as well. I would say largely up until this point, and I'm getting a little ahead of the presentation, but the equity and strategies and innovation side of the department has really been more internal focusing, and we're getting ready to pivot towards more external facing support for residents. With the Office of Neighborhood Safety, it is more external facing, but as far as the services provided, which I'll get to here shortly, a lot of it is triggered by some sort of engagement with the criminal justice system. So it's not something that is easily accessible. For those who are just seeking support, it's really because either youth or some of our adults have gotten into situations where now they're interacting with the criminal justice system, and our job is to minimize the long-term impact of that, and where possible to divert them from even entering the criminal justice system. I'll start giving a little bit more detail about strategy and innovation. With those items that we covered before, I'll get into it a little bit more deeper. With strategies and learning, it really is, the goal is to support equity innovations and build capacity within city agencies. And that's done through the development of trainings, extension of resource, and helping with establishing strategic frameworks. With operations and innovations, the focus really is on those integrating equity into city operations, fostering innovative practices and improving systems to drive equitable outcomes. And then data and evaluation is so important. You can put everything in place, but if you're not looking at it and evaluating it and adjusting as necessary, you really can't gauge your success. So we've got a unit that really is focused on collecting, analyzing, and evaluating data to measure that progress, inform our decision-making, and ensure accountability in achieving equity goals. Communications, we really try to be diverse and equitable in the communication that we put out there and hit a lot of different community organizations. Would love to make sure that we have got all of the RNOs included on that information going forward, and that's something happy to work with Denver Inc. with. And then internal and external councils, and I spoke to that a little bit. It is really core to our mission as an agency that wants to have decisions that are informed by community input, to have that built into the fabric of our operations as well. Race and Social Justice Academy. This is something that side of the shop is really focused on, and they have been doing that work steadily since about 2019, 2020, and it's really based on the Seattle model for race and social justice, but adopted for Denver's unique needs. Since it was instituted, over 10,000 employees have been trained, and as you'll see here, we started out with a foundational course on race and social justice, and have had 3 major courses implemented in regard to that sense. The first one being the story of me, the second being the story of us, and the third being the story of now. So there's really been an evolution of really educating and training city folks on what it means to be a social equity and innovative office, and how to help them lead those approaches and implement that through their policies, procedures, and programming in a great way. Some of the citywide equity impact of that work has been phenomenal. As I mentioned, the 10,000 city employees trained was something that we celebrated, kind of a big deal, especially during COVID, when a lot of city agencies weren't necessarily as engaged and probably navigating a lot of issues at that time. So a lot of great progress there. Since then, some of the evolutions of the training that we offer includes data equity training, so that people are incorporating equitable practices from the onset as they're setting up their operations and their smart measurements. We've had also a lot of involvement in partnership with Denver Public Libraries on some of the digital equity needs that our community faces, and are proud to have partnered with them to deliver over 400 devices, which includes hotspots and Chromebooks for their use. There's also been 4 full-scale equity data analyst projects completed, and a lot of that has been for the administration. And when I say the administration, I refer to the mayoral administration, which I think speaks to their commitment. They've had us come in and do that sort of analysis of things that they want to make priorities for the administration and support it with data collection to make sure that we're doing it equitably. And so I do think that that is a strong indicator, as we're, moving into a new administration in the White House, of this mayor's commitment to maintaining EDI practices here in Denver. And then moving on to the Office of Neighborhood Safety. We have 4 division focuses. The first one is around youth programming that provides support and resources to youth navigating involvement with the criminal justice system. It could also be youth who are, struggling, to be successful in their current situations. We support youth who are involved in human trafficking, youth who are, involved in runaway behavior, and trying to help them. And some of our youth have bad situations at home too, and so that can be really challenging. And it's so important that we're focused on getting them the resources that they need. Community violence solutions, we're really supporting those, currently focusing on reducing gun, group, and gang violence and enhancing safety. As many of you, I'm sure, can appreciate, community violence solutions require a village. And so while it's something that we have as a priority within our agency, it is something that we have a lot of partner agencies across the city who we work with to institute this in a great way. And I'll speak a little bit to some of those citywide initiatives that we're a part of here momentarily. The Aid Center that I spoke of before, it's really a centralized service hub where residents can access a variety of support services to help them thrive. And they are services that are offered at no cost to them. Once a month, we also bring in partners from Denver Health with their mobile medical vehicle. They have a huge van that they bring in, and they're able to help a lot of our population with medical needs that they are not perhaps going to a hospital to have addressed. And we also have dental services offered once a month as well. Trying to work on vision support as well, in addition to the dental and medical going forward. And the real goal here is that some of the populations that we serve at the Aid Center struggle with homelessness. And so maybe, it is very advantageous for them to have a one-stop shop where they can get a phone, where they can get access to services around vital records. Because really, when housing is the end goal, there are foundational things that you need first that you can get at the Aid Center, whether that is a driver's license, whether that is a phone, whether that is a birth certificate. Those are all vital things in order for you to be able to access those bigger services that can really make a difference in your life and the opportunity that you're able to embrace. And so while it may seem low level, it is absolutely foundational to helping the population that we're serving. And then with the support team assisted response, it is a civilian crisis response team that responds to low risk behavioral health related calls and that are made to 911. The goal here is that I think traditionally there's been an over-reliance on police to respond to community in crisis. And sometimes that is not the appropriate response. And then sometimes that's not a response that community feels comfortable with. And there's historical reasons for that. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're sending the right response to the right call at the right time. And this is part of how we achieve that. There's a couple of high-level objectives that this office was really designed to address. And again, central to our entire existence is that community engagement to inform community-driven solutions for public safety. We want to foster community healing. There's a lot of vicarious trauma that happens when there are ongoing shootings in particular neighborhoods. Even if there's one shooting in a neighborhood, the impact that can have from a trauma standpoint is very real. And so we do have a partnership with local nonprofits and faith-based organizations where there is a shooting in a neighborhood. There are a group of folks that come together and they wrap themselves around the community. They'll do prayer walks. They'll hold different resource fairs with resources for behavioral health needs, or they'll just offer the opportunity to gather and to heal collectively together. And that's part of our Safe Haven program. Really, we're here to address root causes. We're not enforcement at all. We are actually trying to take away some of that enforcement component that police and sheriff and in some ways fire too have been responsible for, and say, how can we address this through a non-punitive response? The data does show that in any form of engagement with the criminal justice system can have long-term impact on folks' mental health and well-being. And so really one of our core charges is diverting people out of engagement with the criminal justice system and getting them into services that address the root causes that may be contributing to some of the behavior that's displaying itself. It's also hand in hand with that is it's important that we're minimizing that policing footprint. For a long time, they have been sort of what's been referred to as the point of the spear, where if there is any sort of call for help that's needed, we're sending police. And we've learned over the years that that is not the right approach. And it can be detrimental to our community's sense of well-being and safety. And so that's part of what we're here to do is make sure that where it's appropriate, there is absolutely a place for law enforcement and police in supporting our community. But there's also places where it's not appropriate for them to be, and that's where we're at. We also want to support reintegration for those who are formerly incarcerated and reintegrating to the community. The aid center itself is directly across from the jail downtown. And so we worked really closely with the jail to make sure that upon release, there is a place for them to, someone to walk them over to the aid center so that they can immediately get set up with support services that can help them thrive, especially after being in the environment that they've been in. There's a lot of recovery that needs to take place after those situations, and they can start, hitting the ground running if they could just be transferred right over to the aid center. It's just a short walk. In addition to that, we're also partnering with a lot of our nonprofit and community organizations to offer either vocational training or job readiness training. We have held this year, well, actually in 2024 now, we held 2 different felony-friendly job fairs. And before those occurred on a weekend at the aid center, the whole week before was programming for job readiness. And so we offered free haircuts. We had collected a bunch of business attire so folks could come in and get attire so that they felt that confidence going into the interviews and could represent themselves in the way that they really want to, regardless of their financial situation. We help with resume writing, just a lot of folks wrapping themselves around folks who do need a second chance and who are desiring that and wanting that. And it's so important that we're doing that in the community. And so this is sort of our main overarching objectives for the Office of Neighborhood Safety. I wanted to share just a couple of what does this all mean? Because it's great work. It's so important to the community. But again, a lot of this is triggered by some sort of potentially negative or impactful action that has taken place. And so what does this all mean to you? And so part of what we do in the Office of Neighborhood Safety, we're a smaller unit. There's about 60 of us, which maybe not small but mighty. But we really partner with a lot of other city agencies on citywide priorities and initiatives. And so one of the ones that we're involved in right now is gun violence reduction. We do that through our community violence solutions work. And we are partnering with, I think there's 7 different city agencies. And then we've also got the DA's office, probation, parole, where what we're really doing is we're looking at the individuals who are causing the most amount of violence in the community and trying to just flood them with services and to try to get them off that path. The research and data has shown that if you can address that low number of folks who are causing the most amount of violence, that you can really make an impactful difference in the community as it relates to safety. Youth violence prevention, that's also very big. Younger and younger, we're finding folks are getting involved in these violent acts, particularly with guns. And there's not the same value on their life. And so really putting mentoring programs and other support services in place to help them really, thrive and excel and see their situation a little bit more positively. Place network investigations is a big thing that we partnered with a ton of agencies across the city. It's looking at areas where there's high propensity of crime and then looking at the environmental factors and what can be changed. So it's sort of like safety through an environmental design approach. And sometimes it's simple as lighting. In an area where there's a lot of crime, there's no lighting. And once you get that lighting in there, it really solves the problem. Now, sometimes it's larger solutions than that, but there are solutions that we can put in place that are low-hanging fruit that make a big difference. And that's what this group is charged with doing. Road to Recovery, some of you may have heard of. It's really a mayoral initiative to support recovery and rehabilitation for affected individuals and communities. And so we do partner with them in the AIDS Center. At the end of last year, we did a co-location pilot to see if we could have them available in the AIDS Center. And that way we could really have a housing option for folks as well. And so we're right now in the process of evaluating that pilot. And so we'll have some outcomes for that here, hopefully in the next month or so. The Newcomer Program is something that HRCP, and forgive my use of acronyms, Human Relations and Community Partnerships, they are, in addition to Denver Human Services, they have a lot of the newcomer programming underneath their umbrella of oversight. What we do is we offer a location for their asylum workshops. And so we're really trying to, support that population by partnering with other organizations. And again, if we can get folks work permits who are here legally, then that also helps them become more safe and seek the opportunities that are in the community and help them really just integrate more successfully, which is something we want for anybody who is within our communities. And then the support team assisted response I spoke to a little bit. That's that citywide STAR response, of which we have a portion. And the last one is the Safe City team. This administration and this mayor has been very intentional about when there are big needs like safety. It takes a village. And so he is very good about putting together a village of agencies to address and tackle these issues. And so we're a part of that effort and are currently working with the mayor's office and our partners who are in the Safe City team to establish 2025 priorities. So I just wanted to give you a little bit idea of what does this all mean for you and how does it touch you in a different way if you're not really involved in engagement with criminal justice system or no other community members who are. And then what's on the horizon, what's in the works? As I said, one side of the shop has really been focused internally. The other one is externally, but something has to kind of trigger some of that. And so we recognize there's a gap there in the middle of, well, how can folks proactively access our services, or how can we proactively get them information that's going to help them? And so one of the things we're always doing is establishing that community advisory board for the Office of Neighborhood Safety so that we really have the diverse community input into our decision-making processes, including how we engage and outreach with community. Community-facing Race and Social Justice Academy and other equity trainings. Again, how can we take and leverage what we've done so well internally and have that face externally and benefit the community in a great way? And that includes having an EDI resource hub for folks as well. It might not be as great as Radian's is, and we've had the pleasure of meeting with them and seeing that, and it's phenomenal work. But where can we complement some of the resources that are available from the Office of Social Equity as well? And then we want to continue to expand our community and academic partnerships, making sure that we're getting broad input and engagement in the work that we're doing, that we're not just siloed in our lens, but really getting feedback from a variety of entities and stakeholders to make sure that we're doing the work right and really meeting the needs of our mission and vision. And I hope I wasn't too fast. I'm a fast speaker, but I'm ready for questions when you all are.
Well, this has been great. I know now more about what your office does and how to engage your office. And then, of course, we'll pass that information on to our members and other RNOs. Are there any questions from the viewers? With that, thank you very much, Daylene.
Oh,
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
I did put a question in the chat, and I was wondering about how you're going to pick advisory board members.
Thank you so much, Judy. I had intended to speak to that specifically because anybody who is interested can apply on our website. It is www.denver.gov/social equity. And right when you open that page, you'll see right at the top is the application for the Community Advisory Board. And so it is going to be established through the mayor's office, through boards and commissions. So it's going to be an official entity. And as we're looking at the current state of EDI and some of the uncertainty, that is something that was important to us, that this is a codified community committee that is part of the fabric of our agency going forward. So please, if you are interested, please apply. We'll be reviewing those. think we're going to keep it up potentially through the rest of February. We're still trying to figure that out. We've had it open for a while, just haven't gotten some of the interest that we thought we would. I think some of the holiday, it kind of declined quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we're giving folks an opportunity to apply. So thank you for asking that, Judy.
Yeah, yeah, and encourage people who are passionate about this and who have representing these neighborhoods. This is a good place to advertise that and to
Absolutely.
and
Right.
potentially get some good applicants, I would think, for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judy.
Right. And then there's one more question about STAR, and then we'll have to cut it short. How many STAR teams are there currently, and how many more are needed or desired?
So I can get back to you on the exact number. We only have one STAR program, and then there are vans. And I believe that we have, I want to say 7 vans at this point. I know that it's between 7 and 10. The reason I don't know that is the program is managed by DDPHE. And so our portion of what we manage is a little bit smaller. It's really, specific to the 911 operations piece. But I believe that's how many. And I can say that there are conversations with City Council now about expanding STAR to be 24/7. And so that is something that we're working with DDPHE on. Forgive me for the acronyms, the Department of Public Health and Environment, to kind of think through how can we do that, and analyzing and looking at the data that we have right now, what needs to be tweaked before we're really ready to embrace 24/7 operations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And,
Thank you all.
thank you to all of the presenters today. This has been a very informative meeting, and we will continue to collaborate together. And of course, we'll have the information about how to reach your organizations on our website. So I want to close out the meeting with announcements. The upcoming INC meeting is on February the 8th from 9 to 11. And this will be about the new division of community empowerment. And that also will be online. The INC ZAP committee will have their meeting on February 25th from 6 to 8. That will also be an online session. We want to remind the RNOs to please renew your registration with the city, and then renew your dues with the INC. We have elections coming up in March, so we will be taking nominations for the open board positions through that time. This is a call for action to build up our outreach and events team, because as you can see, we got a lot of fun events being planned for the year. You also, as an RNO, can host a monthly community meeting. Please contact the secretary, at Denver Inc. And then for our Inc. Youth Awards, if you have a youth group in your community that you want recognized, please send the information to our INC email address, and we will forward it to the team lead, who is Jane Potts. With that, with no further questions, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending. Have a good weekend and a good month. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Okay. All right. We will end this. Thank you, Katie.
Sally, Richard, Julie, Carol,
I'm gonna
Ann,
I'll
and Anita.
for all here.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Okay. Yep.
Bye-bye.
See ya. See you, Lamone. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later. Yep.
Okay.